basically in the last 5 weeks, she's broken all records on daily streams and broken all records on the amount of followers she's gained. We took her from 800 followers to about 10,000 in 2 months. And I think she's averaging like between 7,000 to 10,000 streams a day, down up from 300 a day. And that's pure paid media.
Jordan, what's happening?
What's up, man? Chilling, another day inside. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. So couldn't be more excited to have our guest on today, Mr. Parker Reyes. Parker is the head of music at a company called ToneDen. ToneDen is a very powerful marketing platform. It enables lots of different tools to help you go about building and mobilizing an audience online. I think really grateful because Parker talks about very effective ways to run different ad campaigns so you can drive more streams to your music. We talk a little bit about running competitions. We talk a little bit about how you can kind of like different factors that influence the Spotify algorithm so you can really try and focus on tactical ways to drive traffic to Spotify in hopes that over time it leads to a lot more organic traffic that Spotify just drives to your profile. So I really enjoyed this episode. I think it's a very tactical deep dive for artists or managers that are really looking to better understand specific ways in which they can promote their music and run ad campaigns, even if they're not an expert when it comes to running ad campaigns. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, man, I think we really picked his brain very well on this one. Even me bringing up a scenario, you'll hear it with one of my clients that I worked with in the past, where it was a situation where it was, what do we put the ad spend towards? And I think that'll relate to a lot of people, especially because we weren't used to spending ad money for that artist. So people that are kind of in the beginning of their ad spend career, I think will get a lot out of this. And we make sure to also, if you don't have that much money to spend, not only, what should you spend money on first, but also, how should you spend the little money that you have available for ads? We talk about consistency over spending just on one event or campaign. And I think we got super tactical, and I think people will be able to literally take notes on this one. So
totally. And also super grateful. The homie Parker hooked it up for the Music Business Podcast community. You guys can get 10% off of the ToneDen platform. So just go to ToneDen.io, 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 and upon checkout, use the discount and promo code MVP, Music Business Podcast. We out here. We got your back. Check out ToneDen. Get your streams up. And without any further ado, let's dive into this week's episode.
Let's do it.
Parker, what's happening? How are you feeling today?
What's good, man? I'm feeling good today. Today's been pretty crazy, but I feel pretty good. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. No, very excited. I think ToneDen is a powerful tool, and excited to not only dive into ToneDen, but also just talk all things marketing, management. For starters, can you just give a little bit of background context on ToneDen? What it does, how it can help different people in the music industry, whether it's artists, managers, labels, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So ToneDen, most people know ToneDen for their follow gates, basically follow to download gates. That was really popular when SoundCloud was taking off about 3 or 4 years ago. Basically, the CEO invented the follow to download gate on MySpace and ended up blowing up his punk band. I believe it was a punk band back like 6 or 7 years ago on this that he wrote. And it was he ended up getting a ton of bookings out of it for the band that he was in. And that the last 6 or 7 years has developed into a full marketing suite for which that is included in the marketing suite. But we basically are Facebook and Google partners to where we're able to run ad campaigns on paid media utilizing platform. And also there's a ton of other like really cool tools and concepts where artists can, create a gate so you have to follow, a social platform in order to download a specific song. Or we also have like contesting where, big to small to big artists basically create this contest to where users have to do a multitude of actions in order to enter, and they can do all the actions to get those points. But it's basically fan acquisition tools from a paid media level and from just organic kind of coding level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, amazing. That's awesome. As far as what do you feel when it comes to running different ad campaigns? Where do you see as the most common areas where people are running campaigns?
Yeah, on the recorded music side, it's just the thing with the music industry is like most record labels and artist managers run awareness. It's less marketing, it's more pushing. And that's based off of just like how radio is really. It's like it's hard to actually measure real ROI when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about getting awareness of the record. It's less about, how much money I could spend on this campaign and what does that come on a fan gained basis or on a stream basis. It's not really a one-to-one. But as people are becoming more advanced, people are starting to realize if you do paid media right, you can actually start to develop some really heavy fan bases, some really heavy or not organic, but some really heavy engaged fan bases, utilizing specific campaigns that basically people from the multitude of social platforms like Instagram and Facebook and now TikTok. I know TikTok's really, really having a moment. Being able to move those people into the artist bubble and then being able to keep them engaged with music and with anything else, content, whatever you can on a regular basis, keep that artist relevant, especially now that touring isn't really a thing until things go back to normal.
Do you think advertisements are more relevant for some sectors than others? So obviously you can have ads for e-commerce, for tours or events, for streaming. Do you think that it's worth putting your ad spend towards a certain area?
I think every cohort has its own strategy, and if you can get that strategy right and figure out that strategy, it's you can develop a machine of sorts to basically pump money in and get money out. And it really comes down to the artists and the music. That has to be like at a certain level. It doesn't have to be amazing people with like okay music still like sell a lot of merch. And again, this is all subjective.
Right.
But as long as it's good enough and the creative is good enough, you can see a lot of really good value if you set things up right. The problem is a lot of people, try to set something up once, spend like a very small amount of money and see minimal return, and then in their head it's like this is like a waste of money, and then that kind of ruins it for them and for their artists for a while. But if they spend the time to figure out how to do it right, or work with tools that will help you do it right, then you can see like quick return on that.
Does deploying ads make sense more for things that you've already kind of got down, or does it make sense for more discovery? So like, for example, I used to work with an artist who sold a lot of merch, like probably more than a lot of bands who sell a lot more music. And I think, near the end of my time working with him, it was a question of, when we start spending ads, should we be putting it towards to get those numbers up kind of on par with what we think makes sense for merchandise? Or do we dig deeper and just plow music and plow, money into merchandise? So I guess, if you do have a limited budget, what do you think sense to put towards given the pluses and weaknesses of the specific artist, like in that scenario?
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, in order for people to buy merch, they need to like the music. It's like kind of what I was saying earlier. There needs to be some kind of a like connection to the act on that front. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, what I would do in a situation like this is I would spend a majority of the budget into pushing the music and generating a fan base. And then I would create a retargeting audience of people who have done specific actions, watched a video X amount of time. Once they're in the funnel, then I would hit them with, once the deeper in the funnel, the more likely they are to buy something, right? So I would spend like, maybe, if it was 100% of the budget, right? I would spend like maybe 80% on pulling people into the top of the funnel and pulling new cold fans into the world of the artist. And then I would spend probably 20% or whatever, depending on what that is, hitting them with merch or whatever else I'm trying to get them to do as they're aware of the artist and as they're warmed up, if that makes sense.
And is there a budget that you think under that point it just doesn't really make sense to run ads? So like if I want to put $50 into ads for something, does that you were saying earlier that a lot of people spend a little amount and they don't see much, so they think that it's not really effective. What do you think the threshold is for real success? At least at a minimal point, the minimal amount of success that you can get from the minimal amount of budget that you spend.
For sure. I mean, yeah, it comes down to where you're in your artist project, and a lot of times, you can bootstrap it, and it's either you have money, and this is like an old thing, like either you have money or you have time, right? It's like if you have the time, same goal. But another side note is like, even if you have the money, a lot of people don't even know how to spend it right, and they end up wasting a lot of it. Something that I've seen happen a lot. That's just only part of the equation. But in regards to this, just for instance, on these 10 campaigns, there are small baby bands and small artists that don't have a lot of budget to spend, but they're able to spend very small amount of money, relative to the amount they could spend, at like $5 a day of ad spend and see like results like they've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about it's more of a long game. It's like people can, it's like you're trying to build awareness and attention over a long period of time, so that whenever you do have a song that could be a hit, you have that base that's able to be that spark that creates the hit. A lot of times it happens organically, without, the artist having a big fan base, which happens all the time. But in regards to spending, it's like you can spend a small amount of money over a long period of time, and slowly, as you start to generate more income, or, a lot of times these artists have side jobs that are generating them revenue, where they're able to reinvest back into their artist project, mm-hmm. and build a machine that way. It just really comes down to how much you're willing to put into it initially.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? I kind of roundabout.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, a good example of that, at least for me, is a few years ago when I was in college, I kept getting advertisements for banks. And I was like, I don't know this person. I'm not really too sure why I'm getting these ads. And then eventually I just saw enough ads where I was like, I'm going to check it out. And now I love banks. So just for me, it was especially a long game, because I started being like, it's the difference between somebody who, when they put out an album, just promotes that one album, and then when the ad spend is done, that's the last you see that record in your news feed, versus somebody who consistently puts something out. So when they do put something out, it's like, oh, I guess I have been seeing this digital billboard for a long time. Let me finally check this out. And I've bought tickets to, bank shows before. So that's a good return on investment just on me. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how much money went to me specifically, but
and that's the thing is like, lifetime value. Like, you might spend $1 acquiring someone, but if that person ends up being a fan for 5 years and buys X amount of merch and buys X amount of tickets, like, the ROI is hard to track, but it's there, and you have to get them in the bubble for them to even know who you are first. But once they're in the bubble, if you're smart about your content and you're smart about how you're hitting them in different angles, and if you can figure out a way to be omnipresent in a way where they're like, oh, I just saw this artist here. Mm-hmm. Back in the PR, on the PR level, it's like PR is funny. It's like, I feel like this thing is almost a new PR in a weird way. But there's just ways to become omnipresent to where the person sees you all the time, as a fan, and to eventually they hit a trigger where they're like, oh, maybe this is actually a cool artist, and then they get sucked in, and then with the right strategies in place, you keep them in. Otherwise, you're fighting with the attention of 1,000 other, especially electronic side, 1,000 other days that are like live streaming here and selling merch there and posting all these content. You're like, how do I break through the feed and just remain in their face as much as possible?
For sure. Right. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I definitely am very fascinated about the omnipresent thing too. And I think somebody else said too on the podcast, but just the notion that there's like this interesting turning point that when an artist really seems like they're breaking, it's just this moment where you're seeing them everywhere, whether it's like somebody telling you about their music, you're seeing them on social media. So I think using tools like that can be very effective, or using ads to help drive awareness can be super powerful. What are the different
Sam, is that something that you've done in your campaigns via Knox, kind of trying to build that omnipresence? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like this arbitrary turning point where somebody becomes omnipresent, but you're constantly trying to make that storm happen. I think whether you're running ads or creating a bunch of content or trying to secure PR opportunities or interesting like cross promotion opportunities on different outlets, I think it's like something you're always working towards. And yeah, then I do think it gets to a point where there's just these like big moments where you are like fucking everywhere. So I think it's it's more just the culmination of lots of like effort down the right paths rather than like, here's the step-by-step guide to becoming omnipresent.
Yeah. I think I agree, man. I think there's ways to manufacture it. But eventually you hit a critical mass. Everybody's talking about you, and it's a series of different things that happen over a period of years. People like the whole overnight success thing is not true. There are one hit wonder type situations, but a lot of times there's so much back end happening for the last, like, there's like 7 years of learning how to produce, and then like 4 years of like figuring out who you are and what brand you are. And then like you finally get a deal, and there's a whole process and stuff. So these things take a lot of time to get to that critical mass, but I have noticed that the omnipresent thing is like, it's definitely part of the equation,
right? For sure.
If it breaks or not.
Yeah. One other interesting thing too is like, like you're not always like reaching all your fans organically. So sometimes when you're running ads, you can like target people that have engaged with your content or just your existing followers. So oftentimes too, in addition to like with ToneDen, you're able to really dive into a lot of targeting around similar artists, top tier Spotify markets, and then being able to add on the targeting of like who actually is already engaged with your content can be super valuable, because then it's creating that maybe somebody, Banks, you came across this dude a couple months ago, but like you didn't know he dropped a song yesterday. It's like the people that like where you are gonna, maybe it's not building like massive omnipresence, but even if you're just thinking about like who are those early adopters or most passionate fans, and building that like omnipresence at least for them, that can be powerful. So even like outside, when it comes, how do you think about key performance indicators, KPIs, when running ad campaigns, Parker, for artists that are trying to win online?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's hard to answer because there's just depends on what the person's objective is. Sell merch, KPI would be, cost per acquisition. How much did it cost to sell that shirt? Reach and engagement, or impressions and reach, are important. This goes to the omnipresent thing. And you want to try to get that as high as possible, but it just depends. Like if I'm trying to reach as many people as possible, and I don't care if they, become actual regular streamers, then I would go for cost per click, getting that as low as possible. Or just trying to get the word out about something. Right. Like let's say I had a live stream and I wanted to get as many people to know about this live stream. That, cost per click would be more of a KPI there. But, for, let's say I was trying to generate followers on Instagram or Spotify or Facebook, the cost per follower at that point would be more important to me. It's hard to go down on a granular level to like cost per stream. I think at some point that'll happen. But because of, Spotify's API isn't fully open, it's impossible to do that kind of stuff. But on the ToneDen end, what we're trying to do for people is be the interim between, because you can hire an agency, and agencies are great. I ran one for a while, but a lot of times, these smaller artists, developing artists, don't have the budget to pay an agency's expertise level to be able to do that. So it's a different tier of user. There's a lot of people who do have money, but there's a ton that don't. Not money, but don't have that much money. And what we're trying to do with ToneDen is be that middleman that like you don't need an agency, but you can use our tool that's going to prepackage a hyper effective campaign for you. And we're going to add the retargeting audiences that you, as an artist, you focus on your craft, right? You probably don't even know what a retargeting audience is, or how to market, like, period. You probably know how to like push out organic content. But what we're trying to bridge the gap at is like users that have music and have budget, but don't have the budget for an agency per se. So they're able to run these prepackaged campaigns or run campaigns that are optimized through our machine for them to get the results that they would be getting, without having a team, initially. We work with a lot of managers. We work with a lot of record labels. On the management end, they're so busy with all their clients. It's like, I'm a manager myself, and the manager has to do everything for the most part, unless they start hiring a team. But in that interim, if you could use a tool that does a lot of that for you and gets you the results that you need to scale the project at a pretty low cost, it would be a good investment.
Right, for sure, makes a lot of sense. When it comes to, can you talk a little bit about are there any specific stories or artists you've worked with through ToneDen that you feel have used the platform very effectively?
Yeah, there's a few for sure. We just launched a few new products, and we're in heavy new feature launch mode right now. Just trying to get ahead of the curve during everything. And the fact that, recorded music is, streaming is up by 30%, I believe I read pretty recently. And, the amount of people subscribing to Spotify is not going down. It's going up. So that part of the business is like really, it's really good. And we launched a few products that were specific on growing fan bases on the DSP end, right, on Spotify, and we're working on YouTube. We're working on a few, but there's one act that's been running this campaign since we launched. So it's been about two months. I won't name her. She's really dope. She's an alt pop act, but basically in the last 5 weeks, she's broken all records on daily streams and broken all records on the amount of followers she's gained. We took her from 800 followers to about 10,000 in 2 months. And I think she's averaging like between 7,000 to 10,000 streams a day, down up from 300 a day. And that's pure paid media. But what's happening now, and we'll get into this, and I think you guys are going to really like this part of the conversation. Essentially, she's starting to get a lot of support from Spotify now because because her data is showing that she's a popular artist based off of the amount of followers she's getting, the streams, the saves that she's getting. Like the save rates that she's getting right now are like 60%, which is, the industry average is like 12% or something, which means 1 out of 2 people, are adding her song to their collection and, streaming it over and over again because they're actually becoming fans. Right. So massive growth to where she's gotten her first editorial ads over the last 2 weeks, and she's going to continue to get more and more support on Spotify. And that's just one act. We're seeing it happen on a lot of acts. It's like if you can target the right person who's going to actually like you and follow you and stream you and be a fan, there's this really interesting number called the Spotify Popularity Index number. It's I don't know if you guys are familiar with metric. Really, really, really powerful tool. Definitely check it out. You're able to see like all your playlist ads. You're able to see pretty much everything. But anyways, we chatted with them and we learned of this number called the Spotify Popularity Index number. And it's a number that essentially it's based off of our theory. It's based off of many different metrics on how popular an artist is, right? But that number essentially is what Spotify decides on if the machine is gonna playlist you more on the algorithmic playlists like Discover Weekly and like Release Radar and all these different types of playlists. So if you can get that number up, if your music's good enough, A, if you can get that number up, B, you can start to get the support that you need to start to break your act. All the way back to what this paid media campaign does. So the paid media campaign is hyper engaging those different metrics that create a situation where that popularity index number goes up, right? So with this girl that I'm talking about, she started at like 18, right? It's from 0 to 100 being like your Drakes and your Ed Sheerans and stuff like that. She was at 18, very small, just kind of starting out. Really dope though, right? So over the last 2 months of her spending, she's gone from 8 to about 38 in popularity. And that number, we have a theory that once you start to hit around 50, 60 is when you start getting a lot of love from the system. It's still too early to tell, but there's a lot of really nice data points that we're seeing that are showing that. And she's probably a really good use case.
That's dope. Yeah, that's the most exciting thing to me here is when it comes to like, if there is a growth hack, everybody wants the shortcut and the growth hacks. But I do think what gets really exciting to me is figuring out how you could kind of like trip the Spotify algorithm to take your stuff seriously, start putting you into different playlists, and it's a fairy tale from there. So I think being able to run ads and drive qualified, targeted traffic to Spotify, I mean, it seems like a very, like if you are able to run ads and have some budget to run ads, I mean, it seems like a very effective strategy to test. Are there other factors when it comes to like audiences to target or different things to keep in mind when it comes to different like key geographies? Like I know it's more expensive to reach people in higher GDP per capita countries. So like the US versus Brazil, like it's going to be a lot cheaper to get somebody to click an ad in Brazil than it is in the US. Like how does that kind of fit into your strategy or what you think as well when it comes to really trying to help like tilt the scales on Spotify and blow the fuck up?
Yeah. And granted, like people, I don't like to think of it as a hack. It's like, because if the music's really good and you can get enough ears on it and they actually like it, it's like you're just doing your job of putting it in front of the right person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like where I've had that question before, so it's kind of like a weird, not a weird question, but like I just don't want people to think it's any kind of hack or anything like that. It is a growth hack, but it's not, because like it's legitimate people that are becoming real fans, right? But in regards to your question on the geographic, so back to Chart Metrics, they wrote this insane article about this thing called trigger cities, that they're seeing the biggest acts start having a lot of popularity in specific cities within the world. And a lot of them are in South America, Southeast Asia. And basically it's because of the culture. The way people consume music in these different territories is a lot different than the way people in the West consume music. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more social. You know, people are sharing music like crazy, just through text messaging and stuff like that. So like Mexico City, for instance, is the number one most streamed. It's the highest streamer city in the world on Spotify, which is interesting. You wouldn't think so. It's deeply ingrained. Music is deeply ingrained in this cultures. But back to like the actual ad campaign. Yeah. So the problem is when everybody tries to promote, when everybody tries to run ads in the US, for instance, there's only a limited amount of people in the US to hit. So it's like an auction place, right? Those ad campaigns, the cost per clicks end up going, they go up to a place to where it's like almost not economically viable. You know, when you're getting, 20, 25 cents, 30 cents a click, it ends up being really expensive to be able to convert those types of people in the US specifically. So if you end up, figuring out places to target that are outside of the US, like, places in South America or places in Brazil or places in Southeast Asia or global, really in Europe, it doesn't really matter. Those costs go lower because you're competing with less people, but it's still real fans that are listening to your music, right? So and Spotify is a global what's the word? Business. It's a global business. So, to them, it's a person streaming a song and a fan streaming a song. So it's like you want to get as many people streaming as possible, but what we're noticing happening is like whenever we can do a global reach awareness campaign, and because getting awareness in these tertiary markets, the distribution within the Spotify system through Discover Weekly actually ends up getting us more US plays, because if we end up getting, playlists to 3 playlists that have a high percentage of US based streamers, then we ended up getting our tertiary market streamers and our US based streamers at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, versus spending all this money trying to target one location, like the US or, just like Australia or something like that. There's a way to kind of get both.
Where they can kind of like affect each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Since you are a manager, what are some of the things that you've learned marketing wise or ad spend wise that you think a lot of managers overlook, and maybe a couple of things that maybe you overlooked yourself, that you brought attention to as you became more experienced as a marketer and advertiser?
I mean, yeah, it's all about just like running strategic campaigns regularly, but also making sure that you're adding a pixel to these campaigns. And what a Facebook pixel is, it's a little piece of code that anytime a person sees that campaign or clicks to it, they get added to a pins, which it's basically an audience of people that you can then hit with other pieces of content to keep them engaged, over time as you release more and more music. And I think a lot of people like the whole on cycle versus off cycle notion of like, I only want to spend during the album cycle or whatever. That is starting to go away, in my opinion. And I think people are starting to realize like, okay, cool. I would rather spend, and I kind of was talking about this earlier, spend a solid amount on a monthly basis and be able to project out where I'm going to be on a engagement and on streaming and on a fan basis over a long period of time, especially as a manager. Less so much for a record label. Record labels, they're trying to get as many streams as they can. But as a manager, you're trying to build like a fan base that are going to last with you forever. And paid media, when done right, is really important. Granted, it's changed a lot because 3 or 4 years ago, when organic engagement was high, you could post one post and get thousands of likes and comments and shares, and that was a golden era. But Facebook's a business too, and in order to actually increase their ad revenue, they need to throttle that a bit. Granted, if your content's great and you're smart about how you post it, you can keep your organic engagement pretty high. Right. But knowing what good content is a whole nother skill set. It's like knowing how like what looks good and what looks bad. It's like you can have an artist that's really good at making music, but may not have a vision on the branding side of things. But granted, if you have budget and you know how to split the budget up correctly, and you're able to generate fan bases, utilizing the many social media platforms, and then be able to hit them with content in the future over a long period of time, and you do that right, you can get yourself to the next level pretty quickly. And then supplement that, of course, with music releases. You want to be releasing music regularly to give yourself more shots at having that slam dunk song. It only takes one song to get yourself a big record deal. Granted, a lot of times those deals aren't the best. Sometimes they are, but you want to come into these deals with as much leverage as possible, build your own fan base using paid media or using the various, strategies to get yourself to a place where you have more leverage coming into a deal. You can get a pretty healthy, nice deal with a really good record label and end up having a great partnership with them.
Right. So you actually manage a duo that you were telling us about prior to the call that actually had that one big record that had how many streams? You said hundreds of millions of streams across all platforms.
Yeah, funny story. So that record. So it's a little bit of backstory. So we put this record out on just a cool indie house label, and didn't really think much about it. It was just a cool filler record. It's funny. These things happen just and it's frustrating because you're like, oh, I'm gonna put so much time into the single, all this brain power, and it's it does okay and it does good, but you put one song out, you're like, it's whatever. And it's the biggest song ever, and you're like, dude, it's frustrating.
I quit.
It's very frustrating sometimes. What? What's going on here? I know, but the song ended up someone made a YouTube video, and it was very internet. It was someone drew anime manga, and then there was a dance to it, and someone just put it up on a YouTube channel, and that started taking off. And then it was replicated. People were replicating it, but in different niches. So someone made one for Super Smash Brothers, and every character was doing the dance. It was all these different niches were replicating this thing. And I was like, yo, if somebody would have came up with this would have been a genius idea. And I was like, so mad I didn't come up with this. But it started taking off, right? And this, I don't know, we put this out in 2017. It took 8 months. It did decent. It was 100, 200. Yeah. It's 100, 200,000 streams, maybe, decent, not amazing, but decent. And this thing happened. And then we were like, yo, what's going on? I was looking at the back end. I was like, yo, this record's starting to take off. It was it was on the Billboard charts for 3 days. Billboard reached out. What the hell is crazy? Anyways, it explodes on Spotify. As of now, it has maybe 70 million streams. And then on YouTube, it's amongst all the shows, it's 300 million, 500 million. I haven't even counted. It's been a while. It's probably a lot more than that at this point. But that led to, and Apple Music is really, really healthy too. And even SoundCloud's healthy. It's a few million. That led to, us partnering with Ultra Music, and they re-signed the song, and now we're really starting to release some songs with them. So just crazy. It can happen at any point, but you want to lay a groundwork to have a nice foundation, which builds every time you put a release out, to where that song, has a chance at becoming massive, and yeah.
So in that situation, what were the assets that you put advertisements towards? Did you put them towards some of the videos that by these niche audiences, or was it mostly towards Facebook, Instagram, Spotify? So once you're starting to get this momentum, what are the next steps you took as an advertiser marketer to really sustain it?
Yeah, so we started running pre-roll ads, pre-roll YouTube ads, hitting the videos that had the song in it to generate traffic to the upload, the different SP uploads.
Right.
We were trying to capitalize as much as possible, and for those that don't know, pre-roll ads are ads on YouTube where they play before music video, they play before video. And if you run it correctly, you can, let's say I sounded like Kendrick Lamar, and so it was a rapper who sounded like Kendrick Lamar, and I wanted to get awareness on my artist's music video on YouTube. You can run a TrueView ad pre-roll where basically part of that music video plays before Kendrick's music video. And a lot of times, if it's a good piece of content, they're targeted, right? Again, it's they're all hyper qualified, targeted people. You can basically siphon a lot of that traffic that's going to the music video into your artist project and pull them into the funnel. that way. But that's kind of stuff we did, and we were trying to remember like how this went down. So there's this someone created a video. It's like it was a meme. It was memeified, and that's why it went super viral. But there was like a South American like porn star. I don't know. It was like a dude where he was like dancing in a Speedo or whatever, and someone cut it in a specific way where it was hilarious, and then that started going crazy in Reddit. So we were, I'm not going to name who it was, but we should get him to like
not trying to say a porn star's name right now.
Jordan, like, I'm not going to say who knows. Jordan knows though. That's Jordan's world.
we were like, yo, we can break the internet if we can get this guy, the actual dude who was made out of the meme, to like do the dance in the video, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, no. They were like, we tried to reach out. People at some point, there's this whole thing. They're like, no, like we can't do a lookalike. It's illegal. And we're like, oh, damn it. We just kind of like let that one go. But the songs kept going off, and it's still doing its thing, which is really cool to see. But all in all, it's like these things happen a lot. You know, a lot of times you don't have control over if a song ends up being a smash or not. But you can set yourself up with the most percentage of actually it happening with the correct strategy in place.
For sure.
Right.
Love that. What are other things? I mean, when you, as a marketer that also is a manager, I mean, one question too, like, what is it like? I mean, you're the head of music at ToneDen, but you manage artists on the side. I think for a lot of people, I mean, you're not alone in the music industry, or somebody has a cool job in the industry, but then has their kind of like management clients on the side. How do you think about, and how do you go about like balancing the two, so that way you're able to kind of do a great job on both fronts?
Yeah, it's really hard, to be honest. It's really hard. I don't have much of a personal life at these points. But that being said, I do have like people that help me pretty heavily on the management side. I have a day-to-day manager. Her name's Christina. She's great. She really helps me out with my artists. And when it comes to management, you have a day-to-day and then you have a manager. Day-to-day is the one that's really like helping out with, you know, a lot of the like day-to-day things that need to be done, you know, advancing the touring whenever touring is actually happening, you know, social media posts and putting out content, and actually, you know, creating the ad campaigns, which, you know, I would like tell her how to do it and teach her how to do it, but she would be the one actually setting everything up on her front. And without that, it's really hard to do it all, you know, and as a manager, it's like, I made the mistake early on, but I just took on like 7 people, not knowing like,
just like, you're just a fan of music, you know, you just wanted to help.
Yeah. And I would not, any managers out there, it's like, you probably understand, like once they all start to take off at the same time, you're like, yo, I can't do this, too much. And then it just becomes an issue, right? So, you know, I would focus on, right now I'm looking after 4 people, which is doable. They're not all active at the same time either, you know. When it comes to like the most demanding parts of their careers is on the touring end, which is like not a thing right now. And then on the music releasing end, if we're releasing an EP, well, that's pretty time consuming stuff too. And they're not always all active at the same time. So you're able to kind of juggle and like spread out the releases so that you're not like dying, you know, as a manager. Yeah, it's like just me personally, I split my days up, you know, that my normal, you know, 8 a.m., 7 a.m. to like 6 is like what I work on mostly with the team at ToneDen. And then from 6 to like 12, I'll be like working on my management stuff. I have to take a quick call on the management, and during those times I'll do that. But there's also a ton of synergy, you know, that I'm doing at ToneDen is I'm really on the ground trying to find the best strategies and develop the best strategies on all the social platforms and all the DSPs, and then productize them. But I'm learning all of that through all of my stuff on the management end. I'm in it, you know, I'm really, really trying to like get to the next level with my artists. And the only way to figure that kind of stuff out is either if you've been in it for a while, or you're just like almost obsessed with trying to figure it out, you know? But what's cool with me at the company is I'm able to like basically productize these ideas and help, you know, thousands of other managers and hundreds of thousands of other artists with the platform, while also, you know, using that for my own artists too.
Right. Right. What do you think is the most, at least out of the projects you've worked on or the projects that you currently work on, the artists that you currently work on, what type of content do you think is the most engaging in terms of ad spend? And you can separate that into merchandise events, kind of in separate areas, or any examples that you can think of that, it was very clear this piece of content drove a lot of clicks or whatever the KPI was.
Yeah, for sure. It all comes down to, and I know Sam probably go in on this, but it all comes down to storytelling. It's like, how do you get somebody to actually connect with you on whatever level that is? Back in 2000, I don't know, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, you could post a cool image with like four words and be like, "Cool DJ," and usually that'll do well. That would do well when organic reach was like actually like viable. But now, you need to be able to connect with the fan. If that means like a video of you talking to your fans, or a video of you, streaming live, it doesn't have to be the most high quality, crazy thing, but like with copy that's like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm going through as an artist. Like, and artists like, Russ, for instance, there's a lot of artists that really are good at storytelling and adding that layer mentally to where these fans can become like in just like so much more connected to them, to where they're actually, able to monetize those fan bases on an easier level, / like just be able to affect culture in a positive way easier. So yeah, long story short, it's like if you can figure out how to storytell through, the various mediums, video, photo, written word, then you can move a fan to do to become a fan, and to become a music lover in your world.
Right. Just about, it sounds like from what I'm hearing, just spreading that message in a way that's conducive to what your story already is and what your brand already is.
Yeah, it's just like roll with the punches. It's like, okay, cool. Where's the audience now? Now that COVID and quarantine, all that. That's why everybody's moving into live streams, right? It's like all you're trying to do is get the person's attention, break through, right? It's like live stream is its own type of media, but if you can do it right and make it sick and like make it engaging, the problem is a lot of people are jumping into live streams and it's all starting to look the same. It's just a DJ that's like in the corner of his apartment with like, and it's just, I'm seeing that over and over again, and people are becoming, it's like audience fatigue. People are like, oh, it's one of these, unless they have a big fan base. Granted, the big guys can get away with that because they have a loyal fan base, but we're starting to see some cool stuff come out of this. A really, really dope brand that was doing live streams for a minute. They're called Circle. They're you're probably familiar with them, Sam. They I don't know if they stream their live. I don't know if they live stream like, I don't know if it's like completely live, but
most of it
they
is.
live stream on like the top of Mount Everest. It's all live.
Yeah, it's fucking Black
Dude,
Coffee.
and
He's got an epic one up there, bro. He's in their like top 5. It's like 10 million plus views.
Dang.
Really, dude. See, that's what I'm saying. Is like if you can figure out how to like present a live stream in a crazy way, it doesn't have to be on top of the Alpha Tower, but there are ways to make it unique and stand out. And then,
although that would be pretty
to,
tight if it was on top of the tower. That'd be pretty crazy. I'd be like, yo, they won. Yeah, I'd be like, they won the Conte game.
Exactly. It's all about like, but they're sick. Check them out on YouTube. They're amazing. But they're doing it right. And it's just a foundational thought process of like, all right, what's everybody doing? Okay, now how do I like break through that and not do what everybody else is doing, but still within the same medium, and you're starting to see that more often than not, but yeah, it's all about the attention, man. And like figuring out how to get there and in a creative, memorable way over a period of time. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Love that, man. Well, Parker, so excited to have you on the podcast, man. I think everything you're up to is on point, super impactful and helpful. And I think ToneDen is a really powerful tool. So grateful that you're able to share with the listeners ways in which they can use it, and even beyond just using ToneDen, different general principles to help going about building loyal long-term fans, which is the foundation of any successful career in music, man. So thank you so much for joining us today, bro. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, guys. Really, really enjoyed it.
Man, well, I really enjoyed that. I felt like it was a very tactical dive into how you can go about building traffic on Spotify, boost up those streams, get the streams up, start creating a true fan base. And more importantly, I think as you start to build that fan base on Spotify, Spotify sees that you have an engaged profile. They're just going to start sending more and more traffic your way. You're going to get more love from the different algorithmic playlists. I think the way Parker laid it out and the way in which you can use the ToneDen platform, I think it's a tool you should definitely have in your toolkit. Let me put it that way. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, man, I thought it was awesome. You know, as somebody who doesn't really know advertising myself, I obviously asked a lot of questions, Sam, that you might have gone over. But you know, if this is your first time doing, you know, ads or facilitating an ad campaign, I think ToneDen can help. But I also think what we learned from this episode can help. I mean, I literally, you know, pretended as if I hadn't done an ad campaign before because I don't have that much experience with ad campaigns. So I think a lot of people are from A to Z can get a lot of information from this episode, and you know, I'm just grateful for Parker.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So if you guys want to check it out, I really encourage you guys. Like, once again, Parker hooked up the discount code, 10% off for Music Business Podcast listeners. Just go to toneden.io, ToneDen.io, and upon checkout, use the discount code MBP, Music Business Podcast. You know what it is. So we appreciate y'all greatly. Happy streaming. Happy quarantining. Hope y'all staying safe, watching those hands. Sending our love. Hustle on. We out. Peace.
All right.